The landscape of global rugby league looks like it's about to shift massively, and for some reason, kinda nobody's talking about it. Ever since Peter V'landys took over as ARLC chairman, expanding the game has been at the forefront of our strategy. I'm talking about initiatives like Las Vegas and the NRL Run Pacific Championships. And lately, there have been a lot of reports that the NRL wants to take over the Super League, the only other professional rugby league competition in the world. So let's unpack what is probably the boldest play that this sport has seen in decades. This all probably started in a secret meeting in Las Vegas. I know it kind of sounds like something out of Ocean's 11, but it was between Andrew Abdo, Peter V'landys, and the owners of both the Wigan Warriors and the Warrington Wolves. The club bosses put forward a proposal for the NRL to step into a governance role in the Super League to help save the competition from itself. For those of you who aren't across the Super League, it's currently in a really weird spot. On one hand, they just got the biggest international exposure they've ever got in the Vegas games, and attendances are generally higher than they do tend to be over in England. But on the other hand, there are real signs of it struggling. The Salford Red Devils, despite having only made the grand final 5 years ago and having finished 4th last year, have been in real financial turmoil ever since the start of the season. They've now failed to pay their players and staff twice, and had to field an almost entirely reserve grade side in their infamous 82-0 round 1 loss to St Helens. Measures were recently taken by IMG, who are a sports media agency, in order to structure the Super League to make it more sustainable financially. For example, they abandoned promotion and relegation and adopted instead a more franchise-style model, where which division you play on depends on both on-field performance as well as off-field, in terms of how many fans you have, the quality of your stadium, and the quality of your business as a whole. That was considered necessary in order to ensure that teams managed to stay focused on the business side of things instead of just the on-field performance, in order to avoid a situation like in 2017, for example, when the Bradford Bulls, who were one of the league's most successful clubs, fell into liquidation. It's measures like that which see Super League stakeholders looking enviously at the NRL's record profit margins and wanting a piece of that money. But the NRL have made it clear that they don't simply want to buy a stake in the competition. They want full administrative control by 2028. When this was first rumored during the off-season, I will admit that I was pretty skeptical. From what was being said, it sounded like the NRL wanted to repurpose the Super League in order to appeal to the Aussie audience rather than the English one. And I felt that the manner in which it was being discussed, particularly by the Australian media, was particularly dismissive and disrespectful to the immensely historic clubs that they have over there in England, some of which date all the way back to when Rugby League and Rugby Union were both the same sport. But now that we've got access to some details about how it's all going to work, I'm really starting to warm to the idea. The NRL want to buy 33% of the competition, but they do want to have a controlling stake. It also makes sense from a business perspective because, by coincidence, the NRL and Super League broadcast deals are both scheduled to renew in 2027. So if the NRL has the controlling stake in both of those entities, it puts them in a really powerful negotiating position. Not to mention that from an administrative perspective, the Super League having access to the processes and systems that the NRL uses to govern itself could really help the way that they do things over there. But the key question does remain, if this is to go through, what would an NRL managed Super League actually look like? The NRL have indicated their desire to shrink the Super League down from 12 teams to 10. Sources close to these negotiations have indicated that the Super League's Big Six, that being St Helens, the Wigan Warriors, the Warrington Wolves, the Leeds Rhinos, and both Hull KR and Hull FC are all safe. Each of these clubs has also indicated their willingness to be a part of the new competition. Additionally, according to sources, Peter V'landys and the ARLC have made it clear that it is non-negotiable for two French teams to form part of this new competition. One of those sides will obviously be the Catalan Dragons, who currently boast names like Luke Keary, Elliot Whitehead, Nick Chotrich, and Tavita Pangai Jr., and the other will likely be Toulouse Olympique. Toulouse play in the English second division but have been in the Super League in the past and were formerly coached by none other than Trent Robinson. That's 8 locked in with 2 spots remaining. Battling for those spots will be Adrian Lamb's Lee Leopards, Wakefield Trinity, the Castleford Tigers, the Salford Red Devils, and the Huddersfield Giants. But it is quite possible that the NRL look in an entirely different direction for the two remaining teams. For example, the London Broncos look set to be taken over by an Australian consortium in the coming weeks, and their location would prove an attractive proposition to the NRL's expansionist aspirations. The NRL may also seek to rebrand Salford, which is a suburb of Manchester, into a Manchester Rugby League team, and have them as team number 10. In terms of where the funding and the talent comes from to support these clubs, NRL teams have been briefed as to the support that they can provide, and several of them have expressed willingness to become affiliated with English teams. Additionally, at least 2 NRL clubs, one of them being the South Sydney Rabbitohs, have expressed an interest in purchasing a Super League team if the NRL were to take administrative control. Shifting back to the current landscape though, there is some fascinating politics currently in play within the English game that has the potential to make or break this deal. Just in the last month, English clubs successfully led a revolt against RFL chairman Simon Johnson due to a lack of confidence in the direction in which he was taking the game. To replace him, they successfully reinstated his predecessor, Nigel Wood. It was a massive move, putting at risk over $7 million worth of government funding through breaches of the English Sporting Code. And I just want to say, for there to have been a club-led revolt against the governing body of the only other rugby league competition in the world, and no one in the Australian media having reported on it, is very disappointing. The new chairman, Nigel Wood, is a guy who is pretty traditionalist, seeking to favour the historical English teams rather than seek to expand the competition. In fact, with the Super League looking for ways to make itself more financially sustainable, a proposal has been put forward under Wood's administration that would see clubs vote on whether or not to eject the 2 French teams within the English system. In the context of the NRL's deal, it is completely at odds with what they are trying to achieve. The divide is so big that reportedly Peter V'landys and his team have indicated that they have little desire to work with Nigel Wood, and that is something that could genuinely block this deal from taking place. Unfortunately, nothing would be more rugby league than letting politics get in the way of good governing decisions. And I do genuinely believe that this would be a good governing decision. The Super League on its own hasn't made an imprint on the rest of the UK at all. It is stagnant at best and fading at worst. As long as the NRL would be willing to lean on English advice and local perspectives, then the administrative power and the financial backing that the NRL provides could be exactly what the game over there needs. If the NRL were to take control of the only 2 professional rugby league competitions in the world, it is something that would change the trajectory of our sport forever. And there are concerns. I have spoken to Super League fans who are worried that their teams and their competition might become an afterthought for the NRL. But with the 33% financial stake, it's as much within the NRL's interests as it is the Super League's itself for the competition to be thriving. We do need to respect the history and sanctity of the existing English sides. They are very important parts of their respective communities, and we don't want to see them just become glorified New South Wales or Queensland Cup teams, serving no other purpose than funneling talent through to the NRL. But at the same time, nobody can deny the need to transition the English game into a positive new era. As long as we can find the balance between those 2 things, I think this is something that could be really good for the sport long term. I do genuinely as well though want to know your thoughts as fans in the comments below. If you're an Aussie fan, would the greater connections between the 2 leagues make you more likely to watch English Super League games? And if you're an English fan, do you trust that the NRL is going to give your league and your clubs the respect that they deserve? If you enjoyed the video, feel free to subscribe, and if you already have, I massively appreciate it. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you later.